So I see quite a few people who've bought a car and then they get into financial difficulty. The car has been a real drain on their finances. So how do you avoid that? How do you avoid getting into this trap of having a car that's just going to be too expensive to run? And it's a situation that happens quite often. People are tempted maybe with getting an older but higher performance car because the price seemed reasonable, and then they're being stung by lots of unexpected bills later on. So I'm just going to outline in this video the method that I go through to avoid falling into this trap of buying a car that is just too expensive to run. Just taking two cars as an example, we'll go for a pluck it out of the air. A 2002 will be the year. We've got a Volkswagen Polo, a 1.4 with 17-inch wheels, and we'll compare that to the running cost of an Audi A4, again a 2002, but the Audi A4 has got 18-inch wheels and it's the 2-litre FSI engine, so everything on the A4 is going to be slightly bigger. I've picked these, they're quite extreme, but generally speaking, the Audi A4 will hit quite a bit of depreciation and the Polo will hold on to its value quite well. So at this sort of age, you should probably be able to pick up one of each at the same price. But are they going to cost you the same amount to run over a 12-month period? Well, we just have to factor in the typical costs we're going to experience. If we're particularly unfortunate, we may have to get the cam belt changed. Now, that can be quite pricey and it certainly depends where you go to. On the Volkswagen Polo, the general cost that I've seen just asking around and talking to people in the trade is about £400 to £500. On the Audi A4, the 2-litre FSI engine, it's going to cost a bit more than that. You're looking at about £500 to £600 to replace that. So let's assume as well that the tyres need replacing. Now, they won't need replacing every year unless we're a particularly aggressive driver. We should also bear in mind that potentially on the 2-litre Audi A4, you're going to get through the tyres more quickly than on the lighter Volkswagen Polo. But we just look at the replacement cost of a set of tyres for both of these cars. So on the Volkswagen Polo, you're looking at about 300 to 350 for a set of 4, and a comparable set of 4 for the Audi A4, because it's got the 18-inch rims, will be about 450 to 500. So we're obviously talking about budget tyres here. You can obviously go to about 225, 250 per tyre if you want the premium tyres, but it's Bangernomics. We're trying to do things on a budget, so we're going to go for fairly cheap tyres. But you can see already there's quite a big difference in the maintenance costs between the two cars. Now, if you factor in a brake pad change, which is another fairly likely thing we'll have to do during the course of ownership. So if we were just planning to keep it for a year and ditch it, you're probably going to get away with it. But if not, you may get hit with replacing the brake pads. So on the Volkswagen Polo, the brake pad replacement cost is about £100 to £130. On the Audi A4, they're bigger and more expensive, so they're going to cost £150 to about £180. So the other thing we're definitely going to need to do is service the car. Obviously, servicing the car is going to keep it running, it's going to keep it reliable. So you might feel that you're not going to bother servicing it, but that oil change and the filter change really will help to maintain the reliability of the car. So if you are looking at keeping it for more than a year, it's certainly worth thinking about getting it serviced. And again, the servicing costs are going to be different on these two cars. So an oil and filter change on the Volkswagen Polo will be about £150 to £200. On the A4, you're looking at about £200 to £250. So everything again is slightly higher. So let's just total up what we spent on these two cars. Now, I'm happy to assume that we're not going to spend this every year. We might be looking at a 3-year expenditure window. So we can divide these figures by 3. And obviously the cam belt replacement is potentially a 7-year replacement window. So we may be fortunate, we might get away with it, but chances are it's going to be coming up to the time when a cam belt needs to be done, because that's probably why the car has been sold in the first place. And that's quite a big chunk of the cost of the car. So a Volkswagen Polo will cost us about £950 to £1,160 to run with those expenses I've just listed. The Audi A4 running cost will be about £1,350 to £1,530. So straight away, although the costs of the cars would have been similar when we purchased it, the running costs are going to be much higher. So another thing to just consider is the cost of a clutch. Now, this is something you may hopefully never have to do in your car. car. It's typically going to last about 70 to 90,000 miles. So chances are when you buy a car, it's either already been done or you've got quite a few miles left in it. But it is a consideration. So you might want to include this in your calculation and then average out a 5 or 6 year deduction for replacing the clutch. So on the Volkswagen Polo 1.4, I was getting quotes of about £450 to change the clutch. On the Audi A4, the 2 litre, the clutch change was more expensive. Even though the part costs are similar, there seemed to be more labour involved. So most of the quotes I got were in the ballpark of £800 on the Audi A4. So hopefully these things won't crop up, but they can be indicators of where the overall cost is on maintaining the car. So if the clutch replacement is expensive and the cam belt replacement is expensive, if you find you need to replace a sensor in the engine, or there's some other issue with maybe the water pump or the oil pump in the engine, it can also indicate a relative difference in the costs of those items as well. Although we're not psychic, we're not going to predict exactly what's going to happen over the course of your ownership. We've at least got a ballpark of figures to play with. And the other thing that we can't escape from is the cost of fuel. I've done a calculator on TorqueCars.com which enables you to enter the MPG of 2 cars and average mileage. In the example that I'm going to go through here, I've put 12,000 miles in. You also enter the cost of fuel. So if you have a diesel and a petrol or gasoline powered car, you can show the relative difference of those, and it will give you an annual cost. And that's a good benchmark to compare the 2 cars. So just looking at the Volkswagen Polo, now be careful with manufacturer quoted figures. On older cars, they're really inaccurate. You'd be really hard pressed to get those figures. So do a search for whatever model you're buying and find the real world miles per gallon figure. So on the Volkswagen Polo, I got a real world mile per gallon figure of about 35.2. It was an average. It's a benchmark that we can work to, and the same website on the Audi A4, the 2 litre FSI, showed an average fuel economy of 27.8, which kind of makes sense. It's a bigger, heavier car, it's a more powerful engine, so you're going to be down on fuel economy. But assuming you do 12,000 miles a year and assuming you're paying £1.40 per litre of that fuel, the Polo is going to cost £2,293 per year, and the Audi A4 is going to cost £2,904 per year. So you can divide that up into a monthly or a weekly cost if your budget's a weekly, and you can get a real feel for how expensive this car is going to be to just run. So the essentials you can't avoid really is the fuel. The servicing is highly recommended, especially if you plan to keep the car at the very minimum. Do those oil changes, but things are going to go wrong. So taking into account the cam belt and the clutch costs can give you an indicator of the relative ballpark of these cars as well. Other things to bear in mind is that you're going to use components more quickly on a more powerful model. So the sports variant is going to get through tyres and it's going to chew through the clutch a lot more quickly than on the non-performance economy model. There's also a degree of additional cost that comes with having higher performance. So assuming you're going to keep the car for 5 years, you might factor in the annual fuel cost, the annual servicing cost, and just take an average of the clutch and the cam belt and divide that over 5 to give yourself a ballpark on how much a car is going to run. So the car may look like a bargain when you first get it, but when you've done the sums, you might realise it's outside of your reach, or it's going to financially cripple you and limit your spending in other more important areas like buying chocolate, for example. So let me know if there's factors like this that you consider when you're buying a car. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this way of analysing the future car costs, and pass on any tips you can. If you haven't hit the like button, please do so, because that really does help us to get out there. We're still a very small channel and it's still just me working away here, so I appreciate all the support that we get. And if you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I've lined this video and this playlist up that you should find really interesting. Thanks for watching.